So this is Healthy Gamer. And if you don't know Healthy Gamer, basically, this is Dr. K. He is a Harvard professor. He runs a company. It targets gamer men to like help them with psychology stuff. And I watch a ton of this guy. I am not a man, but I really, really love his videos because oftentimes it's just really, really, I don't want to say generally like general. Like I don't want to say his videos apply to everybody. But for me, a lot of his stuff has applied to just my situation. So this one is how anxiety is different for men in particular. So my goal here, I want to watch this video and understand how it's different for men and see if I agree. Like, see if there's points where I'm like, this, I actually do feel anxiety the same, like in this way. I do feel anxiety like this in the same way that he's describing that it's men only or something. They're broadly applicable. So I got one that isn't broadly applicable. Just to see, because he says it's how it's different for men. Obviously, this is in contrast to women. So I'm actually curious. Since he's a Harvard professor, if I argue with any point he makes, I'm so full of shit. So keep that in mind. Also male gamers. Yeah, he speaks to contemporary issues and kind of applies them to this niche. But all right, let's go.
And talk about male type anxiety. And that may sound weird because isn't anxiety? But it turns out that anxiety is a gendered concept.
Oh. This is so loud.
Men experience anxiety very differently from women. And this is a big problem because if we look at our research on anxiety, what we find is 2/3 of all people diagnosed with an anxiety disorder are women. And so what's the reason for that? Let's just think about that for a second, right? Does this mean that women are twice as likely to be anxious as men? Actually, no. It means that our definition of anxiety is a gendered construct in the way.
We might not agree. Yeah, it's okay if we don't agree with what he says, but at least we know that there's research.
The way that women experience anxiety is what we think of as traditional anxiety. But the way that men experience anxiety is actually completely different. So male type anxiety is characterized by two things: low perceived control and physical symptoms.
Okay.
Now, this may sound kind of weird, so let me explain what low perceived control is.
Yeah.
Men who have anxiety, their experience of life is like this. I'm surrounded by problems that are unfixable. I sort of feel like I have no control over my life. I kind of look around and I see situations that I can't fix. Like my girlfriend is unhappy, or my wife is unhappy, or I keep on having conflict between my wife and my mom, and I don't know how to fix this, or I don't know what to do about my job. My career prospects are crap. The economy is crap. I can't buy a house. I can't date. Like everything is falling.
Okay. No, I'm very picky about psych, so if I'm annoying, no, it's no problem. I'm just really curious.
I can't control my life and everything is shit. So you may look at that and think, but isn't that everyone? Like, doesn't everyone struggle with this? Is it just the normal life? And the answer is no. It turns out that there's a good chance that anxiety is at the root. But even weirder than that is that we have...
So I was wondering if my question was, isn't this just something that women would experience too?
Have it kind of wrong. So if we look at the world right now, what we see is that there's a lot of problems that I can't fix. And what we think goes on is that the world is objectively bad. I cannot fix these things. This increases our stress and then gives us a perception that we are out of control. And we think that's an accurate perception, right? The world is shit, therefore I can't fix it. That's not in my head. The crazy thing is that you're right. It's not in your head. It's way weirder than that. The weirdest thing as we look at research on anxiety is not that this stuff is in your head, but actually you create the situations that are unsolvable because you have this stealth anxiety.
Okay, so the anxiety comes before the perception? Basically, the anxiety causes this perception of things being out of control?
Now, I know that sounds really weird, so I'm going to say it again. We think, okay, the world is crap, I'm out of control, right? So the circumstances come first. And then maybe Dr. K is making some point about, this is like mindset or like cognitive reframing, or it's all about perceptions. It's about how we see the world. And if I change the way I see the world, things will be better.
Just feel better.
Head. No,
just stop being sick.
No, what's actually going on is if you have occult anxiety, this creates a perception of low perceived control. And this perception of low perceived control then creates events in your life that are unsolvable. Now,
okay, wait, now I'm understanding. Okay, so he's saying low perceived control gives you anxiety. And when you have anxiety, I'm repeating what he just said, but that's because I'm following. When you have anxiety, that turns into this the perception of reality being out of control. So when you have low perceived control, you create situations around that.
If that sounds crazy, hear me out, because we're going to get into the science of it, okay? I'm going to show you all a lot of different research, which are going to be pieces of a puzzle. The tricky thing about this puzzle is that it's not going to make sense when you see one particular piece. When we stitch it all together is when we will see, holy crap, the way that I am understanding my life and the way that I can get control of my life is actually very different from what I thought. So bear with me. When people hear that we offer
Okay, this is the ad. They always do a little ad. Go use their services. I actually used, by the way, just for reference, I've used the healthy gamer thing. They're not like, oh, you have to be a boy or a man to use this or whatever. You have to identify a certain way. I've used it. They used to offer 6 free sessions to Twitch partners. So I've used this 6 times. Yeah, they used to give free. Yeah, exactly. And I used it, and then I bought 2 extra sessions. It was pretty good, but I think therapy is probably a little bit better. This is like more basically whenever I had like an overwhelming situation or something outstanding, they only could offer me. They were like, you have to go to your therapist. I'm like, well, okay. So basically, it's just like therapy light, but specifically for like gamers.
In actually making a change in your life. Check out the link in the description
Go
below.
check out the coaching if you want.
So this is from a paper called Men's Anxiety, a Systematic Review. So let's take
so we've gone over the first perceived
look
control
at what
thing.
men's anxiety looks like. As such, young men reporting increased anxiety severity were more likely to report physical symptoms, headaches, loss of appetite, body tremors, and sensations of losing control instead of social disruptions, teariness, and interpersonal distress.
Okay, so men actually eat less and get headaches, supposedly, in this report, and women cry. All right.
Compared to age-matched women. So let's understand what this means.
Interpersonal
The first thing we've got to do is define it, right? So this is characterized by low perceived control, and this is characterized by physical symptoms. Now, why is this significant? So if we look at anxiety...
He said that there's 2 points, and I wish I could know what the other point was.
diagnoses across the board. They are 2 to 1 in favor of women. So
But
for
Queen
every
never
2
cried,
women
real.
that's diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, we have 1 man that is diagnosed
60
with
pounds
an
from
anxiety disorder.
Oh.
And why is this? It's because our clinical criteria for an anxiety disorder are characterized by these other things that are more common in women. So a lot of these characterizations are internal feelings, like being worried, being anxious, right? That's the word that we use. These are anxiety disorders. But it turns out that men don't feel that anxiety in the same way that women do. And there are a couple of really good reasons for this. The first is that women have more estrogen. Estrogen
so real
as a hormone makes us more aware of our internal emotional state. So women are able to feel their emotions more easily. But it isn't that simple. So in behavioral observation...
Oh my God. Okay, I'm not going to lie. He moves on to the next point. Like, I have to go 8 points deep to explain the first... I have an estrogen flask. And Dark Souls, when I'm playing Dark Souls, I whip out my estrogen flask. He's
studies of boys
Just
and
have
girls.
to follow.
Boys were disproportionately encouraged by parents to confront
You get migraines.
stressful and fearful stimulants. Where
Okay, what I will say is that I never, ever get anxiety-induced headaches. When I get anxiety, I eat more, actually, which is, like, not good. But I never cry from anxiety.
encouraged by parents to confront stressful and fearful stimulants, whereas girls were more commonly comforted by their parents when displaying a fearful or anxious response. So sure, estrogen is at play, but then the way that we're socialized is also at play. And what boys are taught to do is confront
it up
and fix our problems as opposed to doing some kind of emotional support or awareness.
Oh, yeah, no, I kind of get that. I definitely, you know, if I like was having a problem growing up, I think I got a little bit more support than my brothers. It's also cultural. That's
so now we see these are like 2 reasons why men don't experience anxiety, quote unquote, normally. Because we're actually socialized
estrogen makes you feel
to not
things
focus on our feelings, but to fix our problems. Okay, so this is a second reason.
It would make sense.
So this is why men's anxiety and women's anxiety is different. It's because the way that we're raised is because of...
Okay, but he's explaining why, but I'm like totally cool with the why. I'm like, so I just want to know like how it's different. Like he said that the low perceived control causes the anxiety, and that when you have, I'm just gonna watch the
what
video.
contributes to men's anxiety?
Not the see. Okay, so now he's on to contributes. Go and fix your problems. Yeah. So guys are kind of like, suck it up, get your bootstraps, and girls are more. I definitely, you get like, you have a problem that's like emotional, and we're like, oh my fucking god, no, we have to fix this. Okay. But like the low perceived control, like, I just feel like there's so many gaps
higher
here.
endorsement of masculine norms, including restrictive emotionality, restricted affectionate behavior towards other men, and overt heterosexual presentation were all associated with increased levels of anxiety in young and adult men.
Oh my God, because you guys know, and if you guys are like above 25, like you guys have lived through an age where you basically could never, like, you couldn't wear pink as a man, or people would be like, bro, are you gay, bro? Oh my God, bro. And we were obnoxious about it.
What on earth? Restricted emotionality and heterosexual norms. Hold on a second, Dr. K. Are you telling me that if I'm straight, I'm more likely to experience anxiety?
No.
Kind of, right?
What?
So many years ago, I asked Chat, hey, Chat, how should I deal with my anxiety? And they were like, Sagan D's nuts, bro. And it turns out that they were right, because now we have data that shows us that heterosexual norms, i.e. preference for a particular kind of genitalia, is associated with higher levels of anxiety.
Dude, no wonder why I'm so chill.
Turns out that's not actually what the paper is saying, so let's understand this, okay? What we mean by heterosexual norms is restrictive emotionality and sort of burying our emotions. So the manly man is not very emotional, right? So I'm like, man, I'm going to fix my problems.
I am stoic.
We'll fix them. Like, if it ain't worth fixing.
This is interesting because we also talk about like the great philosophers of the world, like Plato, Aristotle, and like Stoics, as literally their grand virtue was controlling response and emotional response. And we like value that a lot even today, when really like it was probably just a form of repressing. I knew that pussy made me anxious.
That's what we mean. Okay?
Real.
Has nothing to do with what your genital preference is. It's entirely about your restrictive emotionality. So this creates another challenge, because if we are manly men, right, which is like good men, like as boys, we're like, be a good man. What this means is we're not aware of our internal emotional state, which in turn means that even though our anxiety is high, we don't feel anxiety, right?
Okay, so like instead, for men, you're told to be manly men. Then instead of feeling the emotion, you repress it, because manly men, quote unquote, are not like emotional. You don't show emotion.
Instead, what we see is, oh my God, this situation is out of control and I can't fix it. Now we get to the craziest part, which is, remember that I said that the real tragedy of men's anxiety is that we believe our life is out of control. And we sort of think like, oh, Dr. K is talking about like, oh, we need to do something cognitive, right? To change my perception. And then like, once I like understand this all in my fucking head, then everything will be better. No. The crazy thing is our low perception of self-control doesn't just shape our internal environment, it actually creates the problems that are unsolvable. Now, if this sounds insane, that's because it is.
Sound insane.
So here's another paper, fantastic paper from Auerbach, who's at McLean at Harvard. So Randy's an awesome person. The stress generation framework posits that characteristics, behaviors, or circumstances within an individual's life context contribute to the occurrence of dependent stressful events.
Could you explain?
This may sound crazy. So what this sort of means is that more recently, Auerbach, Eberhardt, and Abella found that low perceived control, a belief that one may have the limited ability to change views of the self, world, and future, contributed to greater dependent interpersonal stress.
There's so many words.
The crazy thing about Auerbach's research is that it demonstrates that low perceived control isn't just in your head. And it's not that you misinterpret the world. It is that when you have low perceived control, which is related to male type anxiety, which you can't feel, which we'll get to in a second. When you have low perceived control, it shapes the way that you interact with the world and creates unfixable situations.
Self-fulfilling prophecy. It makes self-fulfilling prophecy. Okay, I got this now.
So it's a simple example.
Therefore
so
it is.
Let's say that I'm worried that I can't make my wife happy.
He's about to explain
if I sort of
well, I love Dr. K, but sometimes he will reword things like 4 or 5 times before he gets to like simple English. And sometimes, you know, I'm live on Twitch and like having the extrapolated version helps a lot.
that in some way that will affect my behaviors, right? I will try a little bit less because what's the point in making her happy if I'm doomed to fail? What's the point in dating
to lose my girlfriend,
if I'm never going to find anyone
like
anyway?
I'm going to lose her.
So as we start to have some...
I think I'm never going to get a girlfriend, so I never try to get a girlfriend.
These perceptions of low perceived control, what the research actually shows
and that gives me anxiety.
This creates
because I do that because I have anxiety.
It's not that the problem comes first and then I feel like I'm out of control. It's actually the other way around. Okay,
so I am anxious, therefore I never will get a girlfriend is how I believe. So I act like I'll never get a girlfriend and then I never do.
Control as...
It came here for entertainment, not to be called out. This is interesting. It's probably taking me some more time to get it because I don't think of the world like this.
Predictors of anxious symptoms and stress. So the key thing about this paper is that this comes first. It doesn't come next. This predicts the anxiety. This creates the anxiety. This creates the stress. It's not that the stress creates the perception of low control. It's the other way around. Okay, here's me and here's the world.
So if you think you have good control, it will lessen your anxiety.
And then what ends up happening is we conclude, I can't win, right? This becomes a logical conclusion. So what ends up actually happening, what the research shows us, is here is me. Here is my perception of low control. This creates a situation that is unsolvable. This then generates stress. Now this gets kind of weirder, right? There are a couple of other things. So this perception of low perceived control is anxiety that we are blind to.
But wouldn't you say that you have a perception of low control because of unsolvable situations that have happened in your life up to this point?
So we don't see it, okay? There's no seeing of the anxiety. That's an eyeball. We don't see the anxiety. Now, why is this important? Why do I believe that anxiety is at the root of this? So now we go back to the amygdala. So
no, not the brain.
Our amygdala, like men and women both have amygdalas. We both have this fucking part of our brain, like lizards have it too. That this is where anxiety comes from. The problem is that subjectively, we don't experience it as anxiety. So when the amygdala lights up in a man, because of our restricted emotionality, because of our heterosexual norms, because of the way that we're taught to fix our problems, we don't feel this anxiety.
Okay.
But it's still active. And let's understand what the impact of this anxiety actually is. So let's say I have...
So when your amygdala, when you do be man, supposedly, and your amygdala do be firing, you don't feel anxiety?
A problem that is of 5 difficulty. And then what ends up happening is I have 5 units of anxiety. And then what happens is these combine to create my actual perception, which is 10 units of difficulty.
Okay.
Now, I know this sounds kind of weird, but I want y'all to just think about this for a second, right? So think about the friends of yours who are anxious and they're worried about
almost all of them.
Right?
Everyone.
So when they're worried about stuff, how likely is that thing to come to pass, right? So if I'm paranoid that, oh my God, my teacher is going to kick me out of class because I sent an email asking for an extension. So when the amygdala is active in our brain, this isn't that they're not dumb or anything like that. This is literally what happens in the amygdala. What the amygdala does is amplifies the perception of things going bad. So what it does is it like, if the risk is actually like 10%,
that's one thing it does. So the amygdala does more things than that, but it can do this as well.
Literally amplify it to 20% or 30% or 40%, okay? Now, this is where things get really tricky. So if we have amygdalar activity that we're not aware of because of emotional restriction, now what we have is we have 10 units of difficulty.
Okay.
And the actual difficulty is only 5, but this is our perception over here. So now this problem seems larger than it is, and this is where we get into really tricky things.
Amygdala is a center of stress.
Once it starts to get out of control, right, because we can't handle 10 units. 10 units is too much. Then we get back to this. So furthermore, when evaluating...
So basically, it just like the perception of stress and the reality of like how much stress there truly is to something can be influenced by your amygdala and make it appear overwhelming.
Evaluating socialized gender roles and coping behavior, individuals with higher levels of masculinity were more likely to employ problem-based coping,
but it was
regardless
probably
of biological sex. So what this statement is talking about is that basically, like, the more masculine you are, the more you try to fix your problems, right? And then this suggests a strong adherence to traditional masculine norms may impact expectant coping behaviors in men, prompting action-oriented problem-solving approaches in the face of elevated anxiety levels. So this
suggests a strong adherence to traditional masculine norms may impact expectant coping behaviors in men. Okay, so basically, if you're super masculine guy, then the way you cope is different. I interrupt your regularly scheduled Sunny to bring you more Sunny. Did you know that only 13% of you are subscribed? I would appreciate it if you subscribe. These videos don't, you know, it would help me out. Thank you very much.
Sense. Okay, so I'm going to translate this for a second. Once again.
Oh, thank you.
So this means is like, if you're a dude and you've got a problem in life, what do you do about the problem? You fucking fix it. Right? That's all. This is a fancy way of saying the more manly you are, the more you just fix your problems, because that's
But you can't always fix problems.
If you're listening to this and you're like, Dr. K, that's dumb, what else are you supposed to do except for fix a problem? Like, what else can you do?
Change your perception?
Here's the problem. In contrast, there may be a threshold at which the tendency to revert to problem-based coping strategies exacerbates anxiety if solutions cannot...
So I'm following. I think this could be said in less words, but also, like, a lot of this video is not explaining how anxiety is different for men. It's explaining how it works, which is, let me just, like, look. So none of the chapters suggest too much explaining how it's different, besides, like, the way it's felt. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. Like, I love to understand how it works for some people, but the differences aren't discussed very much. It's just trying to get people to understand how men feel anxiety, but there's no kind of, like, there's really no discussion how women supposedly feel. There's, like, sentences, but no, this is like a deep dive, and we're lacking, like, a good comparison.
Not be reached by men accustomed to self-remedy. Okay? Previous research evaluating stress and coping suggests that problem-based coping may only be effective when stressors or situations are controllable or can be adjusted.
This is the dichotomy of control, which is like you can only change what can be changed. Like, we have this perception of, like, we can change and impact everything, but you totally can't.
What this means is that problem-based coping only works
when you can change.
If you can fix the problem.
Yeah.
So then what happens in men when we can't fix a problem? So now let's go back to our diagram, okay? So this is important.
No.
Because if we...
Okay, so when there's life situations like the price of eggs, which no matter what you do, you can't fix, supposedly men get anxiety from low perceived control, which is different than women, which means they have anxiety, and the anxiety causes them to self-fulfill, not doing other things. So my low-level understanding is that anxiety literally manifests itself in action, but we don't view it as, like, anxiety because they're not having a panic attack. She's connecting the dots. I'm trying.
You can't fix the problem. What does it do? So now we...
No, it must be fixed. We have to get cheaper eggs.
Get to see how everything ties together. So here's what really happens. Here's me. I am faced with a problem. And then I have this occult, which means hidden, anxiety.
Okay.
Oh, so this problem is 5 units.
I wish you said that earlier.
And this anxiety adds 5 units of difficulty. It's like we're playing the game on hard mode. And this, once we start playing the game on hard mode, now this is 10 units of difficulty, okay? This mob is now too high for our level because we're level 5. But because of our occult anxiety, we perceive this as level 10. As we perceive...
And the perception makes it real.
This as level 10, this creates stress.
Yeah.
Why does it create stress? It creates stress because if we are faced with problems that we...
JJ, I'm sorry, I'm just going to pause. 5 units into 10 units.
Cannot fix, what happens? We get stressed out, right? So let's understand this. So if I were to say, hey, you person who is watching this YouTube video, I want you to wash your hands. Does this stress you out? No. I don't need to be stressed out if I'm washing my hands because I am capable of doing it. No biggie.
Why did I say
I can wash my hands.
I can do that.
Stress is created when we face problems that we perceive as unsolvable.
Right.
So as we perceive this problem as unsolvable, this increases our stress, increases our cortisol, furthermore, increases our anxiety even more, and that also leads to physical symptoms. Headache.
This is interesting.
Tension, muscle aches, all this kind of.
So anxiety causes this hidden anxiety that you don't feel, makes the perception of reality seem too difficult or uncontrollable, which means we do not act, which means, well, we men apparently do not act, which makes them anxious. Hidden passive anxiety. You have a passive debuff. What if I have no hands? I don't know. Some
Kind of stuff. Nausea. Dudes have like just these weird like aches and pains and like, I'm not sure. I need to go to the gym, but I can't go to the gym. Like all this kind of stuff happens. And then these two things then lead to a perception of low perceived control.
No, but then that's going to lead back into the occult anxiety.
To solve. And then this leads to dependent stressors. These are the actual problems that get created in your life. This is the actual sequence of things.
Okay.
It's not this up here. It is actually the opposite. It is this over here. Here's you. Here's a real problem plus anxiety. This makes it overwhelming, but you don't really see this, remember?
This speed is doing so good.
We're not able to see that. This creates a stress response. This then creates dependent interpersonal stressors. This creates the problems in your life. This is what the research shows.
Okay. This is good. This is good info. Thank God. I complained. I was like, oh my God, he is deep diving 8 times. He is going like into 5 different oceans here before he gets to a conclusion. And I guess it's that's good. So basically that's good because I couldn't have understood this big picture. So the picture helped a lot. So basically like there is this hidden anxiety. So I think my next question is, I'm not sure the paper he referenced discussed like I have to go back and look, but the paper he discussed references a few differences between how men and women feel anxiety, but there is definitely like perception of anxiety, like perception of a situation being overblown. I don't think is gendered, but I think what I will say is that it's likely because of the research that it's more likely. It's just more likely to be prevalent in men. So just because women can feel this doesn't mean that it's like a constant thing. Okay, so this is super interesting because I definitely feel this. Like I definitely have in my head blown a situation out of control and then been able to act. So it's just that I don't know about this like anxiety influencing my worldview so much. Could be the perception is rooted in different origins for men and women. The way I feel anxiety is like I just have a panic attack. Like I don't know what's all men. Are you okay? I'm kidding. But yeah, I mean, like, why can't we just have a panic attack? Like,
and this is the real tragedy
it's good for me to know this.
Of male type anxiety. First of all, why are we not diagnosed with it? Because
it's a cycle.
Most people are not aware of this picture. You all have to understand this.
So that's also men feel anxiety, but the way we diagnose anxiety is the panic attack, which I just talked about. We're completely fine. We bought up and taking out on others. Oh no. Well, it seems like a lot of this is like kind of taking it out on yourself. So I don't really identify anxiety. Yeah, I feel like it's more hidden, and I guess if you're feeling emotional anxiety of like panicky, it's easier to spot, but like the occult, as he says, the occult anxiety, the fact that this is kind of like a hidden thing makes it harder to diagnose. This is
put together from 2 places. I did a bunch of research, but then I also work with a bunch of people who are black-pilled. So when I work with people who are black-pilled, what do they say?
I don't know what that is.
They say, this is going wrong, this is going wrong, this...
What is a black-pilled? Doomers? Oh, doomers. Is everything bad? Incel nihilist doomers. Oh, okay. Oh.
This is going wrong. This is going wrong. I can't fix my life. This is screwed.
Okay.
This is screwed. This is screwed.
So people who are like really, really in a bad spot, like toxic doomerism, like, okay, perception of the world is end. Gotcha.
And then along comes Dr. K. Now, everyone thinks, oh my God, Dr. K is a miracle worker. Like maybe Dr. K can fix me. But I can't fix all those problems. I can't fix any of those problems, right? I can't fix the dating crisis. I can't fix this other kind of stuff. I can't fix any of that. So it turns out
Dr. K can't even get me a boyfriend.
When I work with someone who's black-pilled, what I really target is their underlying occult anxiety. So this whole sequence can be broken apart if you understand how it works and understand where to target things. Where's the real inception of this? The inception of this is the unfelt anxiety that exacerbates your problems. The real place to target this is when your amygdala amplifies the size of a danger, problem. Right? And I want you all to think back to when you were little kids.
If I try to apply for this job, the risk of not being accepted feels important. But really, if you apply for a job and you don't get accepted, it doesn't fucking matter. No one cares. But like it might feel, because there's this hidden anxiety, and anxiety will change the perception. It makes it feel like it's important.
You were scared in your room at night.
So he's trying to adjust
when
that.
You were scared, if your parents tried to tell you, hey, there's no real danger, this problem does not exist, could you understand? No, this problem does not exist. Of course not. The child believes that the shadow on the wall is a monster. It takes this hypothetical fear and turns it into a reality. And the crazy thing about people who are black-pilled, and they will dispute this, is they are living in the same world that we are living in, right? We're all living in the same world. Things are hard for everyone, but they say, oh, no, but my chin is smaller and I'm 5'2". Everyone has some objective disadvantages. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying fundamentally, this part we need to really focus on. And this has been my experience. When we target the anxiety, when we reduce the anxiety, this whole cascade falls apart. So then you are faced with problems that are no longer overwhelming. Once you are faced with problems that no longer feel overwhelming, then your stress level goes down. As your stress level goes down, your perception of control increases. And this is the beautiful thing. Once your perception of control increases, you actually start fixing the problems in your life.
So when you feel like you're in control, you take action.
You feel like you can take action. Creating additional problems because of your perception of low self-control. And
well, self-control, perceived.
We hear this advice everywhere,
situational
right? Just
control.
Get started. Just get started. Just get started. Just act. And this is the tragedy of male-type anxiety. We probably have a bunch of men out there, maybe as much as 5% of the population, so 1 out of 20 men, who's experiencing anxiety in some way, but they're not aware of it. All they see is that the world is black-pilled. I can't do anything about this. 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 And the tragedy of that is...
Are we saying that basically just incels are like super, super anxious people?
It is that belief that creates the objective situation. It's just in your head.
That's so fucked up.
This actually creates the problems.
More than 5%. They try to get diagnosed, but they're like, you're not having a panic attack.
In your life. So what do we do about it?
So we kind of gauge what anxiety looks like off of like what girls do.
Start by, first of all...
That seems like low perceived control.
Does this picture fit you, right? Do you look at the world and is your primary experience of the world, hey, or not maybe not primary, but a big part of your experience that I feel out of control?
Calling them incels and using it negatively probably doesn't help either. What is like a polite term for them? For people who, I don't have a definition, who I think like the only is just don't fuck. Which, by the way, used to be like a cool thing to do. Like not fucking used to make you like the coolest guy in church. It's doomers of people with lack of social relations. Those with lack of social relations. But most of us, we're on twitch.tv. I think most of us lack social This is tough.
Control. If
like black-pilled, I just learned this word. Black-pilled people. Doomers. Doomer. We'll just call them doomers. How's that? The coolest guys in church is a funny way to call them. We'll call them the coolest guys in church. Like, why not try to view it positively? There's someone who values it.
If you feel out of control, you may have this male type anxiety. The icing on the cake is going to be if you also have these like physical symptoms and stuff like that, this is going to be really another really important sign. The cool thing is the way that we're going to fix this, by all means, go see a therapist, get a diagnosis, start doing psychotherapy. All that stuff is really fantastic.
Yeah.
But the couple of things that we need to change are, first of all, our emotional awareness to recognize.
This definitely went from how anxiety is different from men to how it manifests, and like he's basically suggesting that this anxiety is like the cause of the coolest guys in church.
Is my amygdala in a hyperactive state, right? And you won't feel worried or tearful or anxious. You'll just be like stressed out, right? So the main thing that you're going to feel is stress and physical symptoms and low perceived control.
Oh, geez,
then
that
you have
sounds
to
awful.
do the hard work of uncovering that anxiety, uncovering these distortions, uncovering the source of your perception that your control is not there in life.
We have to actualize.
As you target those kinds of things, so we have a whole guide to anxiety. We do all these different exercises and community events and stuff like that. Basically focus on that anxiety, because it's not going to look like anxiety, but do all of those same kinds of things. So physical exercise is really great for men. Mind-body practices are really fantastic too, but really target that anxiety. And what you will see is something that I've seen with black pillars over and over and over again, who I've worked with,
I think
is that something changes.
This is a big goal of his, is mental wellness for men, and I think lack of wellness manifests at least obviously in the coolest guys in church community. This is a friendly reminder to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I have been told by analysts that this is good to do.
Once we start decompressing that emotional energy, literally once we start calming down the amygdala, suddenly this is a child in a bedroom who sees that this is not an actual monster, this is just a shadow. And it could be a monster, could be a monster. Let's be honest, could be a monster. Things could be bad. Things may not work out, but their amygdala is not amplifying the danger,
feel like we could
and making
punch
it
that
feel
monster.
more real. As that goes away, our sense of control increases. And once we have a perception that we can fix this game of life, then things actually start to get better. We see those dependent, stressful events start to improve, and then their life objectively gets better. So,
you know, this is actually super interesting, because I almost, in a way, I have an opposite problem in that, like, I believe that there is nothing I can't do, and then I will run into something that I can't do, thinking that I can do it, and then I'll be like, what the fuck? So, like, this is definitely, like, I don't feel anxiety like this. It doesn't, my perception of the world tends to not be a blocker. It tends to be an over-enabler, and that's where I get hurt. So, this being not in action sounds torturous, because, like, some of the worst times for me is like when I'm waiting to do something, and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and I can't start yet. And I'm thinking about it. I'm tortured in like that cycle of thought. I love the concept of seizing agency. Yeah, guys, let's seize our fucking agency. Let's fucking do it. But yeah, there's two sides to the spectrum of not seeing reality, right? Because there's definitely like the I see reality in a way of like anything. I can do anything. And then I can't. And then I'm sad. But then these guys are like, I can't do anything, and then they can't, and then they're sad.
So, if you're a dude out there in misfits, please.
Well, I don't know. I don't think actually the way I do things is like actually typical at all. I think it's autistic the way I do things.
Please take it very seriously. Consider seeing a professional about it. Consider working on your.
Guys, this guy is so cool. I love this guy. This guy is awesome. I mean, who else on earth is like, hey, subscribe to Dr. K. This video is just like super interesting, because he said in the beginning that there's two ways that men feel anxiety, but this low perceived control was like the major thing. It was like a source. So it's like perception creates anxiety. For me, it's more, I can see the differences. I got a little bit fucking like, oh my god, young men reporting increased anxiety were more likely to report physical symptoms, sensations of losing control, instead of social disruptions, teariness, and interpersonal distress. Bro, I'm like, we're never gonna get around the anxious women cry. Women are just fucking crying. This video is about men though, but like, this is also not how I experience anxiety as a girl. I just have a panic attack. Drink black coffee, panic attack. But this is really, really good. This is written in early 2010s. Oh, yeah, you're right. This is like 10 years old. But okay, his strongest point is speaking to a different audience. He totally understands. This is why it's different for men. I think that explaining men's anxiety would have been a better title, because I was looking how it's different. I was kind of looking for a compare and contrast. But this is just an amazing video.